All right, let's go. What's going on? My name is Greg Brown. And if you heard my story, you've heard some of the years that I played basketball, really my entire life, whether it be coming up here in Maryland, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, or Division I athlete at St. Francis of PA, or heading down to Brazil to play professionally down there, or the work that we've done in the wealth distribution space over the last few years. Regardless, what I'm going to share with you today is some of the most transformative information. It's just a level of awareness that unfortunately so many people are struggling with. Every single human being that I've met, whether it been in France or Spain or Argentina or Brazil, or the people that I've met from Nigeria or Cameroon, or every single human being that I've met has dealt with this tension in some capacity. And so I want to share this with you guys, whether it be as a gift, whether it be just something I truly believe will be transformative for the person that decides to just receive the information, whether it's for you or somebody that you're close to. Someone is minutes away from a breakthrough if you're willing to receive the information I'm about to share. And so with that being said, we're going to get into it. And like I said, hopefully this is something that helps you or somebody that you know.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is something, like I said, that everyone deals with. I ran into it when I was playing basketball in Brazil, and they weren't paying us on time. And I remember coming back home and going to work in IT and trying to figure out this. At the time, I was trying to figure out the balance between doing something that I love to do, something that I'm passionate about, or doing something that made me money. Because at the time, the contracts were dwindling and we weren't getting paid on time. So I was having to wrestle between the tension of doing something that I was passionate about or doing something that offered security. Okay. And so what we find often, I can't tell you how many people I come across that are in that struggle right now, trying to decide, okay, do I do what I love? Do I do what brings me joy? Something that makes an impact, that has a mission behind it? Or do I go after the money, the security, the profit, safety, and comfort, and so forth? Here's what I'm finding. The reason this becomes such a struggle is because we see these as opposites. We put them on opposite sides of the spectrum, and we ask ourselves, are we going to do what we're passionate about? Or that word right there, or are we going to do something that makes us money? Okay, that or gives us a binary perspective of the situation, because you can only have one or the other. You're either money driven or you're purpose driven. You can't be both, right? Well, that's not true. You actually can be both. And when we start to broaden our perspective and not look at these two as opposing contrasts, right, but actually see them as a complement. It's like the yin and yang, where you see black and white. And yes, they contrast each other, but they also work in tandem together as a complement. What you'll find is you start to broaden the perspective and you say, okay, well, if passion is not opposite of money, then what is opposite of money? Right? Because when we see them as opposites, we have a limited perspective. But when we say, wait a minute, I don't think money is the opposite of passion. I think the opposite of passion is apathy. I think the opposite of being excited and joyous about what I'm doing and in love with what I'm doing, I think the opposite of that is actually complacency and indifference. Okay. And you know what? I don't think passion is the opposite of money. I think it's risk, uncertainty, financial instability. It's just brokenness financially. I think that's the opposite of money, not passion. Okay. And so all too often we see ourselves pinning these things. Whenever you see the YouTube video, it says passion versus money, right? Or you see the verses all the time. There's so many examples that we see of this. We see the LeBron versus Jordan conversation, right? I mean, even Michael Jordan has said it's an empty conversation and people have fun with the debate, and that's great. But at the end of the day, something that Jordan sees that the average person doesn't see is that LeBron James and Michael Jordan actually complement each other in the totality of the game of basketball. Basketball would not be the same today if it didn't have LeBron and if it didn't have Michael Jordan. Okay, J. Cole says it best in one of his songs, Sideline Story. He says, but you'll never play me like LeBron versus Jordan, right? 20 years, wonder who they gonna say was more important. Both changed the game, came through. And made a lane. Who's to say that who's great? All we know they ain't the same. So the lyrics that he's saying here is they're not the same, but they both brought value. And so many of us are trying to pin one versus the other instead of seeing the beauty in the complement of the two. Okay. When you look at the etymology of the word contrast, It says to set in opposition with a view to show differences. Okay. So the idea of contrast is when we're saying, okay, what's the difference? We're comparing, right? We're debating and so forth, which is great. It's fun and opposing perspectives are needed. That being said, when you look at the etymology of the word complement, you see the same root word as the word complete. Okay. It says a means of completing that which completes. Okay. This was the same problem that I had before I decided to get married. I constantly saw my wife for how different she was and how much we contrasted. I was constantly looking at. And then one day I was finally able to see, oh, the fact that we're different is a good thing because it means we complement each other. If I was exactly the same as my wife, there would be no need for two of us. And so this does not mean we eliminate the differences, but it does mean that we find the beauty in the differences. This is why when people tell me that they don't see color in people and they're colorblind, I reject that statement because I see color and I love the fact that people are different. I love the fact that you have Asian people and Latino people and black people and Native Americans and white people and so forth. I think the contrast is beautiful because it creates the complement in which we call humanity, right? And so we see this problem over and over and over again in the history of the world. We see it, even when we look at the conversation of economics and money and resource and so forth. Me and my wife work in a wealth distribution space. And one of the things we see with families all the time is typically you have somebody who wants to grow their money quickly and you see someone else who's more focused on safety. And so we think again that growth and safety are opposites, but when we see them as a complement, we see them being able to work together. Okay. You also see it in the world when we see Republicans and Democrats. Okay. Again, the debates, the back and forth, the hate speech and so forth, it's this pinning against each other to make it seem like these two parties are actually enemies to each other. But when we start to broaden our horizons, we start to realize that these two parties are complements to a bigger picture. The analogy that I use all the time is of an airplane. And they say if an airplane only had one wing, that airplane would fall out of the sky. That would be like deciding to completely rid America of the Republican Party or deciding to completely rid America of the Democratic Party. The reason why this country is the most magnetic country on the face of the planet with 54 million immigrants is because it has two complete polar opposites that also complement each other. That's why they say in marriage all the time, opposites attract. And so like I said, we see it in the history of our world, whether it be self-preservation versus helping others, right? You have nationalism versus globalism, right? You even have the big debate between science versus religion. And again, these are things that people always pin against each other. But when you open your mind and you give your chance to see from a broader perspective, you see these things may complement each other just as much as they do contrast each other. And so going back to the conversation of purpose versus money, imagine if we said, wait a minute, what if money was not the opposite of passion? What if money and passion could complement each other? And we start to see this quadrant represent so many pockets around the country we live in and the world as well. Okay, so let's look at each quadrant. Let's start with the bottom left. When we look at risk and uncertainty and then also apathy, could you imagine if you're risking your life and you're also apathetic and indifferent about things and so forth? That's a sign of hopelessness, right? You have typically hopelessness, poverty there. You see no way out, right? You have a lot of envy, distress, the negative version of stress. You have confusion, drain, feeling stuck with a lack of vision, direction, and so forth. This is why in the Bible it says, where there is no vision, the people perish, okay? If we have a life with zero passion and zero security and zero money and zero purpose and joy, then there's hopelessness there. Okay, now, if we look at the top left, we see a world with passion, purpose, joy, impact, yet no resources, right? And that's where we start to see vision without funding. This is where we start to see creative ideas that are struggling to monetize, right? Artists that are afraid to water down their content or they don't want to sell their products because they don't want to seem like sellouts, okay? You have churches and nonprofits that are being built without a strong money blueprint, right? You have the bootstrappers without resources and the starving artists and so forth, okay? And so this is really what I would consider the worst version of passion and purpose and so forth. It's passion and purpose without the security of resources and money and revenue and all of that stuff, right? Now, if we look at the opposite of that, we would see the opposite of vision without funding would be what we consider the corporate plateau. Okay, this is where we have comfort, but we're missing something, empty success. We have security, but we're not inspired. We're safe, but there's no innovation, right? It's like comfort-driven decision-making. This is what we consider the golden handcuff, right? Where things are very comfortable, things are very good. However, it becomes the enemy to great because there is no inspiration for more here, okay? And so here's the challenge. This is where we typically find ourselves when we believe that money and passion are opposites. When we believe that they're opposites, then we don't believe they can coexist. So we find ourselves either with a strong vision and no funding, or a lot of funding and no vision. When we finally decide to open our minds and see not only the contrast, but also the complement, we start to imagine a world where we have passion, purpose, and resources. And that's when we start to walk into this world of abundance and alignment. Okay. When you look at the top right, you see, purpose-driven entrepreneurs or mission-driven organizations. This is where you start to see innovation and scale, transcendence, breakthroughs are taking place. And this is really where the dream comes alive, right? I mean, imagine what it would be like to live a life where you get paid to do what you're passionate about, right? Imagine living a life where you get paid to do the things that bring you joy and love, and the things that you're passionate about are also the things that pay you the most, right? Here's what I've found over the years. This life is not possible when we pin purpose, passion, and impact as the opposite of money and security. So when we say, hey, am I going to choose a career based off of passion and purpose, or am I going to choose a career based off money and security? When we do that, we cancel out the ability for abundance to exist. It's only when we start to see the real opposites being vision without funding and funding without vision, it's only then do we open up the door for abundance and alignment to exist. Because abundance and alignment can't exist as long as passion, purpose, and money and security are opposites, okay? And so the real issue we're having is not choosing between purpose and money. It's believing that we have to choose. Because when we believe that we have to choose, we find ourselves in the quadrant of vision without funding or the corporate plateau. Okay, obviously we can all agree worst case scenario is the bottom left quadrant with the hopelessness and poverty and so forth. And obviously best case scenario, we would all want to be in the top right quadrant where we have abundance, where we're passionate about what we do. We love what we do on a day-to-day basis. And as we continue in our passion, it increases our resources, it increases our security and so forth, right? And so here's the biggest problem. Oftentimes when we are presented with an opportunity to align purpose, mission, passion, and resources and money, our first response is that it's too good to be true. Okay. Why is that? Because most of us have experienced examples where we were around people who had vision without funding. So we thought passion was bad. And then we were around other people who experienced a corporate plateau. So we thought choosing money was bad. And then the worst case scenario, we start to get confused and not sure which direction to go. And so we fall back into this level of apathy and hopelessness and so forth. And so when we look at the numbers in America on a day-to-day basis, we see this very dynamic playing out. 65% of Americans are currently living paycheck to paycheck. And that includes 30% of people making over $250,000 a year. On top of that, 50% of Americans are unsatisfied with their work, and only 30% are satisfied with their pay. Lastly, there's been a 400% increase in antidepressants in America over the last 20 to 30 years. And I truly believe it's because we've fallen into the trap of believing that we can't have passion, purpose, and money. Believing that we can't live in abundance and alignment, that the dream is just not possible. It's a pipe dream where we're drinking a Kool-Aid. It's just too good to be true. That'll never happen for me. And that's not true. Believing that that's true is what causes us to fall into the corporate plateau or vision without funding. And so something me and my wife are extremely passionate about is helping people break out of that cycle and transition into this world of true abundance and alignment. So that's why we exist as an organization. If you've seen any of our stuff on YouTube or Instagram and so forth, you'll constantly hear about this word evolve, right? We look at the etymology, the study of the word evolve. It means to unfold, to open out, to expand. It's like the onion being peeled back, the book being being open, revealing the true story. And what I found is oftentimes we are intimidated out of revealing who we truly are to the world because we don't believe that doing the things that we're called to do, that we're passionate about, that make an impact, can also help us live the life that we desire to live as well. And so our mission is not only to live that out, but to help other people do the same. And we are super passionate about community. However, this becomes another one of those dynamics where we oftentimes think if we are trying to help our community, it's the complete opposite of focusing on profit, revenue, shareholder value, and so forth. And so, again, we are here to dispel that and show that impacting our community can be a complement to increasing revenue and profit. One of my mentors says often, those who serve the most earn the most. And so many people have a hard time believing that because they think service and profit are opposites. And so our job is to bridge that gap, to bridge the gap between compassionate people and capital. We truly believe if you have a good heart, you care about people, you truly want to see the world a better place, then the world needs its resources in your hands. If you're somebody who genuinely cares, imagine having the resources to go out there and change your community, to build a nonprofit, to build the homeless shelter, to fund the missions trips, to fund the churches, to build the programs in your community that need the funding in order to be built. And so we bridge that gap. Not only are we community focused, but we are also focused on making sure our community is profitable, that we're teaching concepts about financial literacy, that we're teaching concepts about ownership, transitioning from the mentality of just working to make a living to actually working in order to create something, in order to build something, in order to design a life that's worth living. And so with that being said, if this resonates at all, I mean, worst case scenario, like I said, if this could be something that could lead to a breakthrough for you or somebody that you knew, then this was worth it. If these are principles that you're already in alignment with, then great. Like we would love to meet you because there's a guarantee that there's something you can offer of value to us or vice versa. And if you are somebody that's looking to learn more about some of the stuff that we're doing, feel free to reach out. You can let me know. You can check out our Instagrams. You can check out our website, www.weareevolutionnation.com as well. But I'm hoping at the end of the day, worst case scenario, this is something that could add some value to your life and the lives of the people that are around you as well. And so best of luck to you. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to us. And let's all just continue to live better lives, continue to improve in all areas, so that we can live more enriched lives and we can be a value add to the world that we live in as well. Take care, y'all. Peace.